Stephanie never thought her greatest fear would come from the man who promised to protect her. For years, she carried a secret that ate her alive, a secret that would one day cost her everything. They found her phone on a Tuesday morning, switched off, abandoned near the bridge where she used to walk as a child. Her mother's screams echoed through the neighborhood when the police knocked on her door. But what broke her the most wasn't just losing her daughter. It was discovering the truth about who took her away. The man she trusted, the man she welcomed into her home, the man who called himself family. If you believe stories like this need to be told to protect others and raise awareness, please subscribe, share this video, and help more people hear Stephanie's truth. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a story that could save a life. Stephanie Martinez was 22 years old when her world began to crumble. She was the kind of person who lit up every room she entered, her laughter contagious, her smile genuine. She was studying biology at the State University, working part-time at a local coffee shop to help her mother with bills, and dreaming of becoming a pediatric nurse. Her friends described her as compassionate, the one who always listened, the one who always cared. She had big dreams, ambitions that reached far beyond the small suburban neighborhood where she grew up. But beneath that bright exterior, Stephanie carried wounds that never fully healed. Her father, Marcus, had died in a car accident when she was just 11 years old. The loss devastated their small family, just Stephanie and her mother, Claire. For years, Claire worked 2 jobs to keep them afloat, to give Stephanie the opportunities she deserved. They were close, inseparable really, sharing everything from late-night talks to Sunday morning pancakes. But there was one person who stepped in after Marcus died. One man who promised to be there for them, to help them navigate the impossible grief of losing the man they both loved. Raymond Mitchell, Marcus's older brother. Raymond was 48 years old, divorced twice, no children of his own. He worked as a mechanic, owned a modest house about 15 minutes away from Claire and Stephanie. He was quiet, reserved, always offering to fix things around their house, bringing groceries when money was tight, showing up for birthdays and holidays with thoughtful gifts. To Claire, he was a godsend, the brother-in-law who never forgot them after Marcus passed. To Stephanie, he was Uncle Raymond, the man who taught her how to change a tire, who attended her high school graduation when her mother had to work, who always seemed to be there when they needed him most. But sometimes, evil doesn't announce itself with red flags and warning signs. Sometimes it hides behind kind gestures, behind familiar faces, behind the trust we give to those we call family. Raymond was patient. He was calculating. And he had been watching Stephanie for years, waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect opportunity. Nobody suspected a thing. Why would they? He was family. He was trusted. He was safe. At least, that's what everyone believed. It was a Thursday evening in late September, the kind of evening where the air smells like autumn leaves and distant rain. Stephanie had just finished her shift at the coffee shop, exhausted from a long day of classes and work. Her phone buzzed with a text from Raymond. "Your mom mentioned the kitchen sink is acting up again. I can swing by and fix it tonight if you want. Already grabbed the parts." Stephanie sighed, grateful. Claire was working the night shift at the hospital, wouldn't be home until almost midnight. Stephanie texted back, "That would be amazing. Thanks, Uncle Ray. I'm home now." He arrived 20 minutes later, toolbox in hand, that familiar gentle smile on his face. Stephanie let him in, offering him water, chatting about her classes while he worked under the sink. Everything felt normal, safe, routine. This was Uncle Raymond, the man who had been fixing things in their house for over a decade. She sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through her phone, responding to messages from classmates, not paying much attention. "All done," Raymond said, standing up, wiping his hands on a rag. "Should be good as new." Stephanie smiled. "You're a lifesaver. Want some coffee before you head out? I just made a fresh pot." He nodded. They moved to the living room, Stephanie curling up on the couch with her mug, Raymond sitting in the armchair across from her. They talked about small things, family things, how Claire was doing, how Stephanie's studies were going. But then, something shifted. Raymond's tone changed. His eyes changed. The way he looked at her, it made her skin crawl, made something deep in her gut scream that something was wrong. "You've grown up so much, Stephanie," he said quietly, his voice lower than usual. "You look just like your father, but prettier." Stephanie laughed nervously, trying to brush it off. Thanks, I guess." But Raymond didn't laugh. He stood up, moved closer to the couch. Stephanie's heart began to race. "Uncle Ray, what are you doing?" Her voice trembled. He didn't answer. He sat down next to her, too close, his hand reaching for her arm. She pulled away, standing up quickly. "I think you should go." But he didn't leave. Instead, he stood up too, blocking her path to the door. "Stephanie, don't be like that. I've been watching you for years, taking care of you. Don't you think I deserve something in return?" His words made her stomach turn. This couldn't be happening. Not Uncle Raymond. Not him. "Get away from me," she said, her voice stronger now, anger mixing with fear. "You need to leave. Now." What happened next? Stephanie would replay in her mind 1,000 times. Raymond grabbed her wrist, his grip tight, painful. She tried to pull away, but he was stronger. "If you scream, I'll hurt you worse," he whispered. "And if you ever tell anyone about this, I will kill you. Do you understand me? I will kill you, and I'll make it look like an accident." Terror flooded through her. This was a nightmare. This couldn't be real. But it was. The man she called uncle, the man she trusted, had become her worst nightmare in a matter of seconds. She tried to fight. She tried to push him away. But he overpowered her, forcing her down, ignoring her tears, ignoring her pleas. Time seemed to stop. Her mind disconnected from her body, trying to protect itself from the horror of what was happening. When it was over, Raymond stood up, straightened his clothes, looked down at her with cold, empty eyes. "Remember what I said, Stephanie. If you tell anyone, you're dead. Your mother too, if she gets involved." Then he picked up his toolbox and walked out the door, leaving Stephanie broken and shaking on the living room floor. She stayed there for hours, unable to move, unable to think. When Claire came home just after midnight, she found Stephanie in her bedroom, curled up under the covers, staring at the wall. "Sweetie, you okay? You didn't text me good night." Stephanie wanted to scream. She wanted to tell her mother everything. But Raymond's words echoed in her mind. "I will kill you." So instead, she forced a smile. "I'm fine, Mom. Just tired." Claire kissed her forehead and went to bed, completely unaware that her daughter's world had just shattered into a million pieces. The days that followed felt like walking through thick fog. Stephanie went through the motions, attending classes, going to work, smiling when she was supposed to smile, speaking when she was supposed to speak. But inside she was drowning. She stopped sleeping, too afraid to close her eyes, too terrified of the nightmares that came when she did. She stopped eating, her appetite vanishing under the weight of shame and fear. Her friends noticed. "Steph, are you okay? You seem different." She would brush them off. "I'm fine, just stressed about exams." But she wasn't fine. She was barely holding on. The worst part was that Raymond didn't disappear. He still came around, still played the role of the caring uncle, still showed up at family dinners and holiday gatherings. And every time Stephanie saw him, her body would freeze, her chest would tighten, panic clawing its way up her throat. He would look at her across the dinner table, that knowing smile on his face reminding her of his power, reminding her of what he could do if she ever spoke up. And Claire, sweet, oblivious Claire, would thank him for being there, for being such a good brother-in-law, for taking care of them after Marcus died. Stephanie wanted to scream. She wanted to tell her mother the truth. But every time she tried to form the words, fear would grip her heart and squeeze until she couldn't breathe. What if Raymond made good on his threat? What if telling the truth put her mother in danger? What if no one believed her? So she stayed silent. And in her silence, Raymond grew bolder. It happened again 3 weeks later. Stephanie had been avoiding him, making excuses not to be home when he visited, always making sure she was never alone with him. But he was patient. He waited. One afternoon, Stephanie was walking home from campus, taking her usual route through the quiet residential streets. A car pulled up beside her, Raymond's car. He rolled down the window. "Hey, Stephanie, need a ride?" Every instinct in her body screamed at her to run. But people were watching. Neighbors were in their yards. Everything looked normal. If she ran, they would ask questions. Questions she couldn't answer. She got in the car. He drove past her street, ignored her protests. "Uncle Ray, where are we going?" "My house is back there." He didn't answer. He drove to his house, pulled into the garage, closed the door behind them. Stephanie's hands shook. "Please," she whispered. "Please don't." But he did. Again. And again he reminded her what would happen if she told. "Your mother loves me, Stephanie. She trusts me. Who do you think she'll believe? You, with your wild accusations? Or me, the man who's been there for her all these years?" This pattern continued for months. Raymond would find ways to get her alone, in his car, in his house, even once in the stockroom of the coffee shop where she worked. He knew her schedule better than she did. He was always watching, always waiting. And with each assault, a piece of Stephanie died. She became a shell of who she used to be. Her grades slipped. She called in sick to work more and more. She withdrew from her friends, stopped going to social events, stopped caring about the things that once brought her joy. Claire grew worried. "Stephanie, what's going on with you? You can talk to me, sweetheart. Is it school? Is it a boy?" Stephanie would shake her head, force another smile. "I'm okay, Mom. Just going through something. I'll be fine." But she wasn't fine. She was trapped in a living nightmare, imprisoned by fear, silenced by threats. And Raymond. He walked around like nothing was wrong, like he wasn't destroying a young woman's life, like he wasn't the monster hiding in plain sight. Stephanie began to hate herself. She felt dirty, broken, worthless. She would scrub her skin raw in the shower, trying to wash away the feeling of his hands on her body. She would stare at herself in the mirror, barely recognizing the hollow-eyed girl staring back. Sometimes, late at night, she would think about ending it all, about making the pain stop permanently. But something kept her going. Maybe it was the memory of her father, the way he used to tell her she was strong, that she could overcome anything. Maybe it was the love she had for her mother, the knowledge that Claire had already lost so much. Or maybe it was a tiny flicker of hope that one day somehow this nightmare would end. 2 years passed. 2 years of silence, of suffering, of living in constant fear. Stephanie was now 24, technically still in university, but barely attending classes anymore. She had switched to part-time enrollment, using depression as an excuse, which wasn't entirely a lie. Her mother had tried everything to reach her, suggesting therapy, offering to help with whatever was troubling her. But Stephanie remained locked behind walls she had built to protect the terrible secret she carried. Then one day, something changed. Stephanie met someone who saw through the walls, someone who refused to accept her practiced smiles and empty reassurances. Her name was Angela, a crisis counselor who volunteered at the community center where Stephanie had started volunteering on weekends. Angela was in her 50s, had kind eyes and a gentle manner that made people feel safe. She had seen trauma before, recognized the signs in the way Stephanie flinched at sudden movements, the way her eyes would go distant when certain topics came up. One afternoon, after the community center had closed, Angela invited Stephanie for coffee. They sat in a quiet corner of a small cafe, and for the first time in 2 years, someone asked Stephanie the right question in the right way. "Stephanie, I've worked with survivors of trauma for over 20 years. I can see you're carrying something heavy. You don't have to tell me what it is, but I want you to know that whatever it is, it's not your fault. And you don't have to carry it alone. Something broke inside Stephanie. Maybe it was the kindness in Angela's voice. Maybe it was the exhaustion of pretending for so long. Maybe it was just time. Tears began streaming down her face. Tears she had held back for so long they felt like they would never stop. "I can't," she whispered. "If I tell, he'll kill me. He said he would kill me." Angela didn't push. She just sat there, holding space for Stephanie's pain, letting her cry, letting her breathe. Over the next few weeks, Stephanie met with Angela several times. Slowly, carefully, she began to share pieces of her story. Not names, not specifics at first, just the outline of what had been done to her. Angela listened without judgment, validated her feelings, helped her understand that she was not to blame for what had happened. And gradually, Angela introduced the idea that Stephanie deserved justice, that she deserved to be free from this man's control. "Stephanie, men like him, they rely on your silence. They rely on fear. But there are ways to protect yourself, ways to make sure you're safe when you come forward." Stephanie shook her head. "You don't understand. He's family. He's been there for my mom for years. She'll never believe me." Angela leaned forward. "Your mother loves you, and the truth has a way of revealing itself. You deserve to be believed. You deserve to be safe." For the first time in 2 years, Stephanie began to consider the possibility of speaking up. She started documenting everything, dates and times she could remember, details of the assaults, the threats Raymond had made. Angela connected her with a lawyer who specialized in cases like hers, someone who could help her navigate the legal system while keeping her safe. Stephanie wasn't ready to go to the police yet, but she was taking steps, small, brave steps toward reclaiming her life. But trauma doesn't follow a straight path toward healing. Some days, Stephanie felt strong, determined to end Raymond's reign of terror. Other days, the fear would come crashing back, paralyzing her, making her doubt everything. What if she went to the police and they didn't believe her? What if there wasn't enough evidence? What if Raymond followed through on his threats? These questions haunted her, made sleep even more impossible than it already was. Still, she pressed forward. She began to change her patterns, avoiding situations where Raymond could get her alone. She stopped answering his calls. She made sure she was never home when he visited her mother. And Raymond noticed. At family dinners, his eyes would follow her movements, suspicious, calculating. He could sense that something had shifted, that the control he once had was slipping. One evening, after a family gathering at Claire's house, Raymond cornered Stephanie in the backyard where she had gone to get some air. "You've been avoiding me," he said quietly, his voice carrying an edge of danger. "Is there something you want to tell me?" Stephanie's heart pounded, but she kept her voice steady. "I don't want to be around you anymore. That's all." Raymond stepped closer. "Be very careful, Stephanie. You know what happens to girls who talk too much." But this time, Stephanie didn't cower. She looked him straight in the eye. "I'm not afraid of you anymore." It wasn't entirely true. She was still terrified, but saying the words out loud felt like reclaiming a piece of herself. Raymond's expression darkened. "You should be." He walked away, leaving Stephanie shaking but also strangely empowered. For the first time, she had stood up to him. For the first time, she had told him no. That night, Stephanie made a decision. She would tell her mother everything. She would go to the police. She would do whatever it took to make sure Raymond could never hurt her or anyone else again. Angela had helped her prepare, coached her on what to expect, connected her with a detective who specialized in sexual assault cases. Stephanie was terrified, but she was also determined. She wrote everything down in a detailed letter, every assault, every threat, every moment of horror. If something happened to her, at least there would be a record. At least the truth would exist somewhere. She planned to tell her mother the following Sunday when they had their weekly lunch together. She planned to go to the police on Monday. She had an appointment scheduled with the detective Angela had recommended. Everything was set. Finally, after 2 years of silence, Stephanie was going to speak. Finally, she was going to be free. But Raymond had other plans. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. On Saturday night, the night before Stephanie was supposed to tell her mother everything, her phone rang. It was Raymond. "We need to talk. Meet me at the old bridge, the one near where we used to go fishing with your dad. It's important. It's about your mother." Stephanie's blood ran cold. "What about my mother?" His voice was calm, too calm. "Just meet me there. 1 hour. Come alone, or you'll regret it." Stephanie knew she shouldn't go. Every logical part of her brain screamed that this was a trap. But he had mentioned her mother. What if something had happened to Claire? What if this was another one of his manipulations? She grabbed her keys, her phone, and drove to the bridge. It was dark, isolated, the kind of place where screams would go unheard. When she arrived, Raymond was already there, leaning against his car. Stephanie stayed in her vehicle, doors locked. "What do you want?" Raymond walked toward her car, his face unreadable in the darkness. "I know what you're planning, Stephanie. I know you've been talking to people. I know you think you're brave enough to destroy me." Her heart stopped. How did he know? Had he been watching her, following her? "Get out of the car," he said. "We're going to settle this right now." At this moment, what would you do if you were Stephanie's friend? Would you believe her? Would you speak up? Comment your thoughts below. Someone's life may depend on your answer. Stephanie didn't get out of the car. Instead, she put it in reverse, tried to drive away. But Raymond was faster. He jumped into his own vehicle, chased her down the dark country roads. Her hands shook on the steering wheel, tears blurring her vision. She fumbled for her phone, tried to call 911, but in her panic she dropped it. The phone slid under the passenger seat, out of reach. She could see his headlights behind her, getting closer, closing the distance. She didn't know these roads well, especially not in the dark. She made a wrong turn, ended up on a dead-end road that led to an abandoned warehouse district. She realized her mistake too late. Raymond's car blocked her exit. She was trapped. He got out of his car, walked toward hers with deliberate, terrifying calmness. Stephanie locked the doors, but Raymond had a crowbar in his hand. He smashed the driver's side window, glass exploding everywhere. Stephanie screamed. He dragged her out of the car, his hand clamped over her mouth to muffle her cries. "I told you what would happen if you talked," he hissed in her ear. "I told you." Stephanie fought with everything she had, kicking, clawing, trying to break free. But he was too strong. He hit her hard across the face and everything went dark. When Stephanie woke up, she was in a dark, cold space. Her head throbbed. Her wrists were tied. She couldn't see anything, couldn't tell where she was. Panic clawed at her throat. "Help!" she screamed. "Somebody help me!" But no one came. Hours passed, maybe days. She couldn't tell. Raymond would come occasionally, bringing water, food she refused to eat. "This is your fault," he would tell her. "All you had to do was keep your mouth shut." Meanwhile, back at home, Claire was frantic. Stephanie hadn't come home Saturday night. Her phone went straight to voicemail. She wasn't answering texts. By Sunday afternoon, Claire called the police to report her daughter missing. The officer who took the report was skeptical at first. "She's 24, ma'am. Maybe she just went out with friends and forgot to check in." But Claire knew better. Stephanie always checked in. Always. The police began their investigation, talking to Stephanie's friends, checking her social media, reviewing security footage from the coffee shop where she worked. They found her car abandoned on that dead-end road, driver's side window smashed, her phone on the floor with a cracked screen. Signs of a struggle, blood on the broken glass. This was no longer a case of a young woman who forgot to call home. This was a kidnapping, possibly worse. Detectives interviewed everyone close to Stephanie. Her classmates, her co-workers, her mother. And of course, they interviewed Raymond. He played his part perfectly. The concerned uncle, devastated by his niece's disappearance. "I can't imagine who would do this," he told the police, his voice breaking convincingly. "Stephanie is like a daughter to me. If there's anything I can do to help find her, please just tell me." Claire clung to Raymond during those terrible days. He was the only family she had left, the only person who understood what it felt like to lose Marcus, and now possibly lose Stephanie too. He brought her meals, sat with her while she cried, assured her that Stephanie would be found. And all the while, he knew exactly where she was. He had put her there. Days turned into weeks. The police investigation hit dead end after dead end. There were no witnesses, no clear suspects, no ransom demands. Stephanie had simply vanished. Searches were conducted. Volunteers combed through nearby woods and waterways, but nothing turned up. The media covered the story for a while. Local student missing, family desperate for answers. But eventually, as it often does, public attention moved on to the next tragedy. Claire couldn't move on. She put up missing person flyers all over town, kept Stephanie's phone line active hoping she would call, slept in Stephanie's bedroom surrounded by her daughter's things. Raymond was always there, offering support, playing the role of the grieving uncle. But behind his concerned facade, he was calculating his next move. He couldn't keep Stephanie hidden forever. Eventually someone would find her, or she would find a way to escape. He had to make a decision. And the decision he made was unspeakable. 4 months after Stephanie disappeared, Angela, the crisis counselor who had been working with her, went to the police. She had waited, hoping Stephanie would turn up, hoping there was some other explanation. But as time passed, Angela's concern grew. She remembered the fear in Stephanie's eyes, the way she had said, "If I tell, he'll kill me." Angela contacted the detective handling the missing person case and asked to speak privately. "Stephanie was working with me," Angela explained. She had been a victim of ongoing sexual assault by a family member. She was planning to come forward to report him to police. She was supposed to tell her mother the day after she disappeared. The detective leaned forward. "Did she tell you who the family member was?" Angela shook her head. She never said his name. She was too afraid. But she kept saying, "Uncle." She called him Uncle. This information changed everything. The detective began to look more closely at Raymond Mitchell. On the surface, he was clean, no criminal record, just a couple of speeding tickets over the years. But as they dug deeper, cracks began to appear. They discovered that Raymond's second ex-wife had filed for a restraining order against him years ago, claiming he had become violent and controlling. The order had expired and the ex-wife had moved out of state, but it was a red flag. Detectives also discovered that Raymond had taken an unusual amount of time off work around the time of Stephanie's disappearance. His co-workers mentioned he had seemed distracted, on edge, not his usual self. They obtained a warrant for his phone records and found that he had called Stephanie multiple times the night she went missing, including one call that lasted 3 minutes, around the time she left her apartment. But they needed more. They needed evidence that could tie Raymond directly to Stephanie's disappearance. Then, a break came from an unexpected source. Claire, while going through some of Stephanie's things one more time, desperate to feel close to her daughter, found a notebook hidden at the back of Stephanie's closet. It was Stephanie's journal, filled with entries from the past 2 years. Claire began to read, and what she found destroyed her. Entry after entry detailed the abuse, the assaults, the threats. Stephanie had written everything down, dates, times, locations, Raymond's exact words. "Uncle Raymond came over today. Mom was at work. I tried to avoid him, but he cornered me in the kitchen. I hate him. I I hate what he does to me. I'm so tired. I don't know how much longer I can keep pretending. Another entry, dated just days before she disappeared. I'm going to tell Mom everything on Sunday. Angela helped me find a lawyer, a detective who will help me. I'm scared, but I have to do this. I can't let him do this to anyone else. Claire's hands trembled as she read. Her stomach turned. This couldn't be true. Not Raymond. Not her brother-in-law. But the words were there, in her daughter's handwriting, page after page of horror and pain. Claire called the police immediately. The detective came to her house, took the journal as evidence. Mrs. Martinez, I know this is incredibly difficult, but we're going to need to ask you some questions about Raymond's access to Stephanie. Claire collapsed under the weight of realization. She had invited him into their home. She had trusted him around her daughter. She had been blind to what was happening right in front of her. He was always here, she whispered. Always helping, always offering to fix things. I never suspected. Oh God, Stephanie. My baby. She tried to tell me. That day at lunch, months before she disappeared, she asked me if I thought Raymond was a good person. I said of course he was. I said he was family. I said we could trust him. Claire broke down sobbing. She was trying to tell me and I didn't listen. Armed with the journal and the new information from Angela, detectives brought Raymond in for formal questioning. They didn't arrest him yet, didn't have enough for that, but they made it clear he was now a person of interest. Raymond maintained his innocence, claimed the journal was fabricated, that Stephanie must have been mentally unstable, writing fantasies. I love that girl like my own daughter, he insisted. I would never hurt her. But the detectives pressed harder. They obtained a search warrant for his house, his car, his property, and that's when they found it. In Raymond's garage, hidden behind old paint cans and toolboxes, they found Stephanie's necklace, a silver chain with a tiny star pendant her father had given her before he died. She never took it off. Claire had mentioned it in her missing person report, had begged people to look for it. And now here it was, in Raymond's garage. Raymond's story began to fall apart. He claimed he didn't know how the necklace got there, suggested Stephanie must have left it during one of her visits. But the detectives weren't buying it. They brought in cadaver dogs to search his property. The dogs alerted near a section of his backyard, a spot where the dirt looked recently disturbed. Police got a warrant to excavate. What they found ended any doubt about Raymond's guilt. Stephanie's body wrapped in a tarp, buried 3 feet deep behind his garden shed. The medical examiner would later determine she had been strangled, likely within hours of her initial disappearance. She had been dead this whole time, buried on Raymond's property while he pretended to help search for her, while he comforted her grieving mother, while he played the role of the devastated uncle. Raymond Mitchell was arrested and charged with first-degree murder, kidnapping, and multiple counts of sexual assault. The evidence against him was overwhelming. The journal, the necklace, the body on his property, the testimony from Angela about Stephanie's plans to report him. He tried to claim self-defense, tried to say Stephanie had attacked him and he had only defended himself. But the forensic evidence told a different story. Stephanie had been bound. Her wrists showed ligature marks. She had been held somewhere before she was killed. This wasn't self-defense. This was murder. Premeditated and cold. Raymond Mitchell's trial took place 11 months after Stephanie's body was discovered. The courtroom was packed every single day. Claire sat in the front row, staring at the man she had once called family, the man who had destroyed her life in ways she could never have imagined. The prosecution presented the journal, the forensic evidence, testimonies from Angela and other witnesses who had seen changes in Stephanie's behavior. They painted a picture of a predator who had used his position as a trusted family member to abuse and ultimately silence his victim. Raymond's defense tried to discredit Stephanie's journal, suggested she had mental health issues, implied she might have made false accusations. But the jury saw through it. They saw the timeline, the escalation, the evidence. After 3 weeks of testimony, it took the jury less than 4 hours to reach a verdict.